When people hear the word accountant, they will generally tend to think about numbers, spreadsheets, and financial reports. And there's a good reason for that, because that is all part of the job of an accountant. But I think there's one part of an accountant's job that is often overlooked, and that's ethics. And in my opinion, it's just as important as understanding how a balance sheet works. And so if you're curious about ethics in accounting and what it really means, in this video, we are going to go through the basics of ethics in accounting. And in order to do that, we are going to go through the 5 fundamental principles of ethics in accounting. And we're going to talk about why they matter so much. But before we dive into that, let's just quickly talk about why ethics in itself is such a big deal in accounting. And the reason for that is that accountants are trusted professionals. They handle sensitive financial information and information that is often confidential to businesses, and the public often rely on them to make decisions. And so if that trust, that really important trust, is broken, the consequences can actually be huge. Think about things like fraud, financial collapse, massive reputational damage to companies. And so ethics helps to keep accountants on the right path. Now, a way of breaking down ethics in accounting is, as I've just alluded to earlier, is the idea of the 5 fundamental principles of ethics in accounting. You can kind of fit every single ethical concern or issue into one of those 5 different principles. And so what we're going to do in the rest of this video is just run through those different principles, explain what they are and how they might actually work in practice. So let's start with principle number 1, which is integrity. Now that one's simple. It's basically about being honest and straightforward in everything that you do. And the idea is that accountants need to provide reliable, trustworthy, truthful information. They can't fudge the numbers to make things look better. They can't cover up bad news. And so integrity, in a sense, is the foundation of trust in accounting. I mean, if you think about the major financial scandals that have happened in the last few decades, the things that make the front page news, very often those scandals will be rooted in a lack of integrity. And if the accountants that were involved in those scandals had stuck to their ethical principles and hadn't perhaps caved under pressure from managers, those disasters would probably have been avoided. So integrity, which is the first principle, very, very important. The second principle, fundamental principle of ethics in accounting, is objectivity. And this is to do with the fact that accountants should be unbiased and independent in their reporting and in their decisions. They shouldn't allow personal interests or pressure from others to change the way that they act. So imagine that you're an accountant working for a company and your boss asks you to manipulate some numbers on the spreadsheet to make the business look more profitable. And maybe they even promise you a promotion if you do. What do? Objectivity would mean that in that case, you stick to the facts, even if it means pushing back against that pressure or perhaps forfeiting a promotion. And so objectivity really matters. Now, the third principle of ethics in accounting is professional competence and due care. And that is basically about knowing your stuff and having the right skills and knowledge to do the job. It's about being competent, basically. And now you might think that competency doesn't really sound like an ethical issue, but actually in an industry like accounting where a high level of trust is involved, and actually there's a lot of danger if that trust is broken, if there's a lot of danger if things aren't done properly, actually competency becomes an ethical issue. If accountants are not up to date in their knowledge, the consequences can be disastrous. To use an analogy, think of it. Would you want to be treated by a doctor who hasn't kept up with recent medical advancements? Of course you wouldn't. And the same goes for accountants. Businesses and clients rely on accountants to give accurate, reliable information and advice. And so they need to really be up to date on the latest regulations. So a lack of competence in accounting is actually an ethical issue. Then we got principle number 4, which is confidentiality. Now, confidentiality might be relatively obvious what it means, but the idea is that accountants handle a lot of sensitive information. That could be salaries, that could be profits, that could even be business strategies. And it's their responsibility to keep that information secure and to not just share it with anyone that they want. And so that means no gossiping about client details, no sharing information to get ahead, and don't use insider knowledge for personal gain. Confidentiality is key to maintaining trust. And that's why it's one of the key fundamental ethical principles in accounting. Finally, ethical principle number 5 is professional behavior. This is about acting in a way that reflects well on the profession of accounting. Accountants need to make sure that they follow laws and regulations, obviously, and so they need to make sure that they avoid any kind of conduct, any kind of behavior that would bring that particular profession into disrepute. So they always need to act in a professional manner. Basically, don't do anything dodgy. Don't be the accountant that puts pressure on junior accountants to manipulate figures. That is a massive lack of professional behavior. Don't do anything dodgy. That's the idea there. Now, just to remind ourselves, why are those principles so important? Now, we looked at this at the start of the video, but just to remind you, accounting is not just about numbers, it's about trust. And so it's really important that those who are served by accountants, businesses, investors, governments, can rely on them to provide accurate, honest information. And so if that trust is broken, the whole system falls apart, which is why ethics come into play to keep the profession of accountancy accountable. It makes sure that accountants stick on the straight and narrow, you could say. And that's why every aspiring accountant, whether you are studying with CIMA or with the ACCA or any other qualifications, you need to understand these ethical principles because they will guide you in your career. So there we go. 5 fundamental principles of ethics for accountants. So it's integrity, objectivity, professional competence and due care, confidentiality, and professional behavior. And if you are thinking about a career in accounting, remember, ethics is at the heart of everything you do. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it's been helpful. And if you want to learn more about accounting, make sure that you subscribe and follow us for more insights.